for those who don't know, John is a friend of mine, and he has his own YouTube channel. It's Seabolt Speaks, right? And we just have chats on occasion. And today, I want to sort of introduce this chat as sort of a debate, kind of, but more of a discussion where we'll probably just both share our own experiences.
Yeah.
As far as whether it's better to use comprehensible input or whether it's okay to use incomprehensible input. And maybe the benefits and drawbacks of each.
Yeah, because there's definitely a different way that you can use. Also, it's a prerequisite before anything. For whatever reason, I have become this weird voice in the mass immersion approach community. Like, people come to me for mass immersion approach advice. I am in no way, in shape or form, affiliated. I am a friend of Matt. Matt is a good friend of mine, but that I don't receive any compensate. Like, I'm in no way, shape, or form affiliated with him outside of I'm just friends with Matt. So I'm not like a weird MIA shill. I don't know how I became this weird MIA guy, but here we are. So
right, and by Matt you mean Matt versus Japan?
Oh yeah, Matt versus Japan.
Right. Do you just want to outline his approach really briefly, or at least what makes his approach different than like the Steve Krashen, Stephen Kaufman type?
Sure. Well, it's actually, and maybe if Matt ever watches this, maybe he'll hate my answer here. But I find that Steve and Matt have very similar philosophies. It's both the heavy input, drown in the material, and you eventually acquire the language. They're very, very similar. I do believe there are a few things that they disagree on. They have an interview where they talk and they disagree on a few things, but they're very, very similar. Basically, in a nutshell, and I'll actually give you a link. You can put a link in your description below to go to Matt's website if anybody wants to read about it. But basically, you watch native content made by natives for natives. You don't watch anything translated or anything like that because it's not true language. You immerse in the content, whether you understand it or not, and then you'll do flashcards. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you can make sentence cards. You'll do sentences. That's probably a pretty terrible sum up, but I don't want to talk for 100 minutes on what the approach is. So you guys can go check it out. Basically, watch content in your native target language, made by natives for natives. Pick some words out. So it's that. Hopefully that's a decent nutshell there.
Yeah, it sounds more or less accurate to what I've heard them, at least what I've heard Matt and what I've heard you talk about in the past. So the reason I kind of framed this discussion sort of as like a debate earlier on is because generally when I'm telling people what kind of input they should be taking in, I stress comprehensible input. This is kind of a theory that was made famous in, I don't know, the 70s or 80s by Stephen Krashen, right? The important thing, Steve Krashen's whole thing is that you don't learn a language, you acquire it, which is different from studying grammar rules. You acquire the language, and the way that you do this is by taking in messages that you already understand.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's actually very, very similar to, I mean, my argument for, I'm not just trying to like jump into this, but just to give you I think there's a time for comprehensible and there's a time for incomprehensible. And I know that sounds incredibly stupid, but hear me out. If your target language is comprehensible all the time, you know the language. You no longer need to learn it. It's already learned. When you start out, it has to be incomprehensible. If it's not, if my Japanese that I was listening to right now was completely comprehensible, I would know Japanese. Where incomprehensible input benefits is when you don't have, for example, at work, I can have headphones in. I can listen to music or whatever. I choose to listen to Japanese YouTubers, Japanese TED Talks, Japanese shows, whatever. I don't understand that fully, but there are benefits, and the benefit is the language is coming in. You don't know what they're saying. Part of language learning is learning how to hear the language. For example, if you were to study in English, if you were studying English and somebody was trying to teach you the phrase I want to go to the store, it's not going to be wrote IWANNAAGOTOTHA store, like I want to go to the store. Like it's not going to be wrote like that. Mm-hmm. The only way that you can learn that is by listening to it. Now, you may not understand it the first couple of times or whatever, but eventually you'll pick up the patterns and how they slur their words together. And so the incomprehensible input, it eventually becomes comprehensible, but really and truly what you're using that for is for passive listening, and you're training yourself how to hear the language. It's not necessarily about trying to understand what they're saying, although that definitely is the point. You're training your ears how to hear it, because you probably know people that you've probably done this yourself. I don't know. I know I have. When I learned Esperanto, you learn so much, and then someone speaks, you have no clue what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because you've not listened to anybody speak.
Right. Yeah, that's totally true. I run into that all the time. Like, you learn the textbook way of saying something. I want to go to the store. Mm-hmm. And then you have an actual conversation with someone, and they don't speak like that. They say, I'm going to go to the store. Right?
Exactly.
I want to go to the store.
It's not even words. It's just sound. Which, I mean, I know words are sounds, but...
It's just like vowels running into each other.
Yeah.
How do you parse that out, though, if you're listening to it all as incomprehensible input? I mean, if it doesn't make any sense to you when you're having a conversation with someone and they say that, how is that beneficial to just sit and listen to the string of vowels and just kind of incoherent sounds all running together?
So, I have no answer for that outside of just that I personally have done it. Mm-hmm. When I listen to Japanese, I don't know what they're saying, but I can, for the most part, tell you exactly where a word starts and ends. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. Maybe I'm not a great debater here because I don't have like the scientific, here's this. But I can tell you, I track my time. Starting July 6th, I started tracking my time religiously in terms of, because I was doing a 40-hour challenge that Mark from Language Come Up had introduced to me, which was just trying to study 40 hours in a week. I work a full-time job. I have a wife and a kid. I do YouTube. I do a ton of other crap. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do 40, but 20 of it has to come actively. 20 can come from passive, just listening at work. And I can tell you from July 6th to this day, I have done 154 hours of listening to Japanese passively. I've done 344 hours total since July 6th.
Wow.
But I've done 154 hours and 20 minutes passive, and the ability just since July 6th for me has went absolutely through the roof. Like, I can hear it. Like, I thought I could hear the language decently before then.
Really?
But it's night and day. Like, and what's weird is when I hear it, I can't remember what it's like when it just sounded like that.
Yeah.
Like, I can't remember that.
That's an interesting process that you go through from like, because now I know when I listen to someone speak Spanish, it's like, man, I remember a point in my life where I could hear someone just speaking Spanish, and it sounded all like gibberish, and now it's all it all makes sense.
You can't not understand it, even if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's crazy how that works. And I think a lot of it is being able to put together these incoherent strings of words that lazy speakers, and I don't mean lazy in a derogative sense, of course.
No.
Every speaker of every language does this. We take a sentence that's made up of a finite number of words, and we smish them all together into one word, And I think a big part of learning a language is learning to be able to hear that long string of words that's sort of like it's all gray and it's a continuum of words, and being able to parse it out and figure out where one word ends and one doesn't.
Now, one thing. Go ahead.
But I mean, so I'm not arguing. When I say this is a debate,
No, it's conversation. What I was going to lead into is also understand what I am passively listening to are things that I have actively watched. So
okay,
it's I guess maybe I should have led in with that. I don't know. I expect you'll get a lot of negative comments on this. There's a lot of people that hate this idea. but like, so if I watch a show the night before, that's like the first thing on my list to listen to for passive listening, because I've already seen it, and so I can kind of connect some stuff that's happened, or whatever the case may be, while I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I remember this scene, and they're probably talking about this. I don't know what they're saying, but it still gives me that, because the idea of immersion, period, is that your brain unlocks these patterns. Your brain is designed to pick up patterns. This is what it does. So as you watch the stuff and stuff is coming in, even if you don't understand it, your brain will slowly pick. I've learned several Japanese words without looking them up, like just the context that it's giving or has been given. And there's just Japanese words now that I know that I've actually literally never looked up. I just know them because of watching content.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so what I was about to say earlier is that, I've sort of framed this as a debate at the beginning, but I'm not interested in like proving you wrong or contradicting your point of view. I'm actually more interested in hearing from your experiences, which go against what I've been taught and what I've found to work for myself. But with that said, what you just described here actually goes along very well with what I believe, where you actively study something first, and then you use that as passive in the background, kind of. Yeah.
Now, to be fair, in mass immersion, what you learn from is comprehensible, because once you get kind of to a point, like basically they kind of recommend going through the Tango and 5, which is the 1,000 most common words, which make up roughly 75% of the spoken Japanese language, or that's, I'm sure statistics change on a daily basis, but that's the general estimate. And so from then, when you're watching these shows, like I use Learn Languages with Netflix, I'll look at it. If I see a sentence and there's one word in that sentence that I don't know, but I know the rest, that's a flashcard, because it's comprehensible. I know everything except for this one word. And that's actually, like, literally, that's what you do until a point of like a general F word that I won't say. So it's I mean, you literally do that until then. So you learn via that, but the important part of the incomprehensible input, it's obviously, if you have a chance to actively study, do that all the time. That's gonna, if you can do that 20 hours a day, do it. But if you can only study 3 hours a day, but you can still get 8 hours of passive listening in, that's still going to benefit you, absolutely. It's still going to train you on the way that the language sounds. You have to get used to these sounds, because they're not sounds that your language makes. No language that you study is the same sounds that your language makes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's totally true. I'm glad we had this conversation now, with maybe a little bit of confrontation, but because now that you describe it in a little bit more detail, it sounds, like for me, I'll read something on Link. I'll read a mini story, one or two mini stories a day, right? And I sit there and I go through the story and I click on the links that I don't recognize, right? And I get them from blue to yellow to light yellow to white, right? Yeah. But I can only do that during the time that I've dedicated to learning Greek.
Right.
Right. When
also, Link's Greek course is fantastic, by the way. Like they're I find that their Greek works really, really well.
Yeah. I agree. But so I can only do that during the certain hours that I've set aside for learning Greek. Whereas while I'm driving to work or mowing the lawn, or while I'm doing yoga, or fishing, or whatever I'm doing, I can put on that playlist function, which I love about Link. After I've read through the story 20 times, I can just hit that playlist and press play, and it'll read through my stories. And I don't always, my mind drifts. Like, I put this on in the background as I'm listening to it, and sometimes I'm driving and I'm paying attention to the cows on the side of the road or whatever. Well, hopefully they're on fields on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I do the same thing, actually. And
I mean, it's basically what I wanted to say, and I'm not debating that passive or incomprehensible is better. I'm debating that there absolutely is a time and place for it, because anytime you can have the language around you is good. Yeah. If you can only have it passively, it doesn't matter if you understand it or not. I mean, it would be better because, like, for example, right now, if someone walked by your house and they started yelling something, whether you wanted to understand it or not, you would, because you speak English.
Yeah.
You eventually are doing that. And while you're listening to this stuff, it's easier to just listen to stuff to be able to hear it versus trying to always find that stuff. Like, if you're in a bind, don't spend 30 minutes looking for something that you can casually listen to and only listen to maybe 5 minutes of anyway. Just throw something on just to be able to get the nuances of the sounds and all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah, and I recognize that, just being able to listen to the prosody, like the rhythm, the intonation of the language, being able to hear some of those sounds that don't exist in your native language. Any exposure you can get to that, I think, is going to be beneficial. My problem is when we say listening to comprehensible input. To me, the image that invokes in my mind is putting on. And say you're learning Russian. I don't know why I always use this. When I first started using this analogy, I was in the process of reading Crime and Punishment, and so I always in English.
Right.
But the analogy I always use is that if you open up Crime and Punishment and you just start reading in Russian, you're not going to learn a dang thing. You won't learn one word if you're just looking at it, or if you put on the audiobook, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you could make the argument that you'll start
gradually
to get exposure to like the intonations or something along those lines. But if you're just drowning in a sea of words that you don't know, you're not going to learn any words that way.
It would definitely be very hard, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Steve Krashen, I always mix up their names. Steve Kaufman, Krashen.
Stephen Krashen. Yeah.
Krashen is the linguist. Kaufman is...
the linguist? No.
His blog is called The Linguist.
Yeah.
Anyway, Steve
also,
Krashen...
I'm not out of breath. I just got through doing 30 minutes of I also do yoga randomly. And I just did 30, and I'm trying to replenish my water, like, because I do power yoga, so I died. So I'm trying to replenish my water.
Oh yeah, I'm just releasing a video this coming Monday. Actually, it'll probably already have been released by the time this video comes out, about yoga and language learning and
nice
guided meditations.
Yeah.
Anyways, Stephen Krashen has a sort of famous video from, gosh, I don't know, the 70s or 80s or something. It's pretty famous. Where he was kind of introducing the concept of comprehensible input. And the first thing he does is he says, all right, I'm going to teach you some German. And then he goes rattling off a paragraph in German.
Yeah.
And then he says, all right, did you learn any German? Of course, the answer is no. You learned no German because you didn't understand anything he just said there.
Anything.
Right? And then he says, all right, now I'm going to try another approach. And he says... I don't speak German. He says something along the lines, "Das ist mein Hand,"
Right.
Das ist mein Hand, du Hand, or whatever the appropriate German word is, right? And he pulls out some cigarettes and he says, "Das ist Zigaretten, Zigaretten nicht gut." Or, I don't know.
Right.
The people who actually speak German are probably laughing and making fun of me right now. But you get the picture. It's comprehensible even though you don't know any German. I don't know any German, and I understood what he was saying.
Very little. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, I am of two minds as well, right? You don't need to start entirely all in your target language where you do nothing but listen to someone say, "Das ist mein Hand," right? As an adult language learner, we actually have an advantage where we can start learning a language relatively quickly, as opposed to like children where they have to wait 2 to 3 years before they can really start actually speaking the language, right?
Right.
So I use translations. I use textbooks that say, Hand in in German means hand in English or whatever it is. You know, mano or le main.
Right.
It is hand in English, right?
Yeah. I definitely. I mean, like I said, like if you have the option to study, like to actively study and make it comprehensible, absolutely. Like, there's no question that's going to be the quicker thing. I just think. I think a lot of people, like, I think if anybody would try, like, if you hate it, that's fine, right? All I can do is speak from my own personal experience, which is, what did I say, 154 hours and 20 minutes since July the 6th of just, that's just the passive, and, like, my listening ability. See, now as I'm adding these words, I don't have to wait and be like, oh, let me read the subtitles. Oh, okay, I kind of did get that. I can get it. Because I'm adding that word to that. So everything that I listen to every day from where I've added vocabulary from, I'm doing my Tango deck, everything becomes a little more comprehensible because I've added a couple more words and I can already parse the sounds of the language.
That's right. That's what it sounds like to me is, you know, if everything you're doing is an attempt to make your incomprehensible input more comprehensible.
Yep.
I mean, you know, that's what we should be doing, right? That's why, like, you know, in my book, like, that's why I have pictures, right?
Right.
It makes it makes it comprehensible. If you don't understand what's going on, you can look at the pictures, right? One of my favorite methods of learning is, you know, I read these graphic novels.
Okay.
Where, you can see what's going on in the story, even if you miss a word, right? You can see that the kid's crying, and then you can see, you know, you can tell what their emotions are. That's also why I like watching movies and TV, because it makes things comprehensible. Anything we can do that will make it comprehensible, whereas the message was incomprehensible beforehand, just like Krashen saying, you know, pointing to his hand, pointing to the pack of cigarettes.
Yeah. I think I definitely. I mean, I think if you're fighting, that's the idea, right? Is to fight to make everything comprehensible. Now, one question that I get all the time from people are because when I do when I'm doing my active immersion, like I'll watch 2 or 3 hours of Japanese television a day. I'll read the subtitles sometimes I won't, and it's just to soak it in. I try to listen to everything.
Subtitles in English or in Japanese?
In Japanese.
Okay. Cool.
And I'm to a point where when I started this, so like I know it's going to sound weird to say when I started, I understood a little, but I started doing Mass Immersion Approach in April, but I already have at least a kind of a basic knowledge in Japanese, but I've spent the last few years trying to do it, and I've literally not advanced. And then I've been talking to Matt since June, I think May or June of last year, and I mean, you know, it took me a couple of tries. I mean, because it sounds, you're just like, I don't know, man. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, he's the only dude who's preaching a method that doesn't cost you any. I never have to give Matt a single dime, and I can access every single thing that he has ever done. And I was like, it sounds like that sounds like somebody who's legit just trying to give people advice. And I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. And I started in April. And when I started in April, I could probably understand 1 to 2% of what was being said. And I'm probably to a point to where I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but I think giving the circumstances of Japanese incredible difficulty, I feel like, I mean, maybe even on a good day, 10%, but I would say between 6, 7, 8% on like just any average show. And then if it's like something overly quote unquote what they call slice of life, then like it's probably a little bit more because it's like your generic, you know, daily vocabulary. But yeah, I mean, but the thing is, regardless of what anybody feels about that, whether it's slow or not, I could care less what you think. That's not, no offense to you. I'm incredibly happy with it.
Yeah, no, that's great. Especially, well, you said you started in April.
Yeah, so April 1st.
3-4 months.
5 months.
5 months.
I just finished my 5 months. I just started yesterday into month 6.
If you can increase by, you know, understanding another 6, 7, 8% every 5 months, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I'm not, and that's I'm done with the I want to learn a language in a month. I want to learn a language in 3 months. I don't care. I just want to enjoy my journey. I want to enjoy what I'm doing. And that's what I'm going to do, man. And that's, I feel like that's part of why my YouTube channel has grown too, is because I stopped caring. I just want to enjoy it. And people are like, this dude's having fun learning languages. So cool.
Yeah, I hear that. So another thing that you mentioned earlier on is you listen to only authentic native level content. You don't listen to learning content, which is something Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. So I'm doing the Tongo deck, Tongo N5, which is I'm not taking the N5 test, but that's the 1,000 most frequently used vocabulary or whatever, and that's taught also in a comprehensible way. It'll be like, oh, here's like Shinkansen, which is like a type of train, and then it'll be like, well, you already know how to say Osaka and go, so why not go to Osaka with a train, like that kind of thing. Like it's taught in that manner. That was a very poor explanation, but so I'm doing that. But in terms of the content that I'm consuming, right? I don't watch. I don't watch, and which I mean, I eventually will read Harry Potter in Japanese, but that's a little bit different. That'll be way down the future. But in terms of what I'm watching on TV, I'm watching anime. Like I'm not watching like I'm not watching. I'm trying to even think of an example. I'm not watching like I'm not watching Seinfeld dubbed in Japanese.
Yeah.
You know, I'm watching just like show, like I'm watching like Erased and Kantaro the Sweet Tooth Salaryman, and what is it? There's a show I'm watching right now called like the Could Have Gone All the Way Committee or something like that, which is weird. I just watched a show called The Naked Director, which is a very wild show. Like I'm watching and it's all content made for Japanese, because that's how else are you going to pick up some of the nuances? Like sometimes translated stuff is hard to pick up. So, which I mean, I know that you're getting into it for learning, but yeah, in terms of content like that I'm consuming for immersion, it's purely made for natives by natives.
Yeah, I totally get not watching like Seinfeld or something that was designed for English speakers and translated or dubbed into Japanese. And it's actually, sometimes I'm a little jealous of people that are learning Japanese, because there's
so much content.
There's this huge, like, subculture of people who already like all of this content that's created, and they're already watching it dubbed into English, right? And
strangely, I'm not a huge anime fan. Everybody assumes I got into Japanese because of anime, and
that's usually how it works.
Yeah, but I'm actually not I got into a phase with it for just a brief second, but I'm kind of back out of it again. I still just don't really. There's some stuff I think is okay, but I'm not a big anime fan.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm not either, but I feel like if I started learning Japanese, I would be thrilled to have this huge repository of content that's there for me to watch, right? Like, there's nothing like. I mean, I guess you can watch Spanish movies, French, Spanish soap operas and stuff like that.
But on the other end of the spectrum, so Japanese is my main, like I spend at least 40 hours a week in Japanese. The other language that I do occasionally jump in and dabble in has almost no content at all.
What's that?
That's Afrikaans.
Oh, yeah.
I can't find, like, outside of, like, I'll talk to Lindy occasionally, and she'll, like, I'll send you pictures of some magazines I'm reading or something like that. And literally, that's it. Like, there's no, or, like, I found some, like, news stuff on, I hate the news in English, so I definitely am not going to watch it in another language, so it's hard.
Yeah, I ran into the same problem with learning Thai. And while I was in Thailand, I would always be going to bookstores looking for some kind of book, some kind of like a graded reader or something that I can read in Thai that's designed to teach you Thai. And they had huge book sections, language sections devoted to helping Thai people learn English, but not a whole lot. I was never able to find anything.
Dude, I love one of my favorite series of movies is from Thailand.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Ong Bak.
Never heard of it.
It's like Muay Thai stuff.
Oh yeah.
With Tony Jaa. Those movies rule, man.
Yeah, I've never seen
The Protector and stuff like that. Tony Jaa's the man.
Yeah. I had some friends. I worked at a school, and the majority of my coworkers were female, so I went over to my friend's house for a soap opera nights once in a while, and we would watch these Thai soap operas. It was.
Whoa.
I thought, I'm not a soap opera person, but I was like, hey, it's an opportunity to practice getting some input in Thai, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure.
So that was an experience. But
Yeah.
it was really tough finding content in Thai that I was actually interested in watching.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Japanese learners are spoiled. Like, I say that from my own perspective, because it doesn't matter what you want to watch. Japan, I mean, outside of America, Japan, it may be the largest, like, exporter of entertainment. Like,
yeah, wouldn't surprise
dude,
me.
Japan, that's purely speculation just because of my love of Japan, but, like, dude, there's literally nothing that I can think of that Japan does not make.
Yeah.
Like, there's books, movies, TV, like, on the regular. Like, they literally make everything.
Yeah. And so I want to go back to something you said earlier, too. So I totally get not wanting to watch something that was designed for English speakers dubbed or subtitled into Japanese. Would you spend time listening or watching content, and I don't even know if this really exists in Japanese or to what extent it exists, but would you watch content designed for people who are learning Japanese? That's like originally in Japanese, but just designed to be easier, like a graded reader type thing?
I mean, I would. I looked into some kids books that were translated, and right out of the gate on the first page they used a wrong hiragana. And I was like, all right, nope. So I'm not opposed to it.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know, man. I just find what I'm doing to be, I don't know, like, because the thing is, Japan has graded readers, manga, like, you know what I mean? Like, I need to put myself in the perspective of if I wasn't learning Japanese and I didn't have so many resources readily available, I would definitely change my approach. But in Japanese, there's literally no point because they make everything.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that makes
so
sense.
it's kind of hard to put myself in that perspective, because if I just want to read something easier, I don't have to read a graded reader. I can just read an easier manga.
Right.
Or something, which I still have trouble getting into reading anyway,
Yeah.
but just as an example.
I tried doing that in Thailand. Because I couldn't find anything that was designed for teaching Thai to English speakers or to teaching Thai to anyone, I tried, I started reading kids' books, and that was beneficial. It was, I would put it along the same lines as reading, like, one of the mini stories on Link. I also bought, like, a Plants vs. Zombies, basically like a manga, I guess. It was, like a comic book. It's not, like, huge, but it's 100 pages or something. And like I said, when you have the pictures there, it's helpful. And so I tried reading that. That was too difficult for me, though. I was beginning my Thai. And I just was really longing for something like when I was learning French and Spanish. I found this series on YouTube called Extra. Have you heard of that? Used it at all?
I know of Extra, like the American TV show, but I don't know.
Well, it's a TV show on YouTube. It wasn't designed for YouTube, but it's on YouTube now. And it's in English, French, Spanish, and German. And it's essentially the same TV show. It's a sitcom.
I definitely haven't. I don't know what that
is. It's awesome because it's not. It's the same story. It's the same sitcom, but recorded 4 different times with different actors in 4 different languages.
Gotcha.
So the script, it's not like the script was just translated and dubbed or anything like that. It's literally 4 separate shows, and I used it for learning French and Spanish. And it's not dubbed. The actors are French or Spanish.
Yeah. That sounds alright.
And the script was designed for French and for Spanish, for people who were learning those. And it was really nice because it's entertaining in the same sense that it was essentially like a low budget version of Friends or How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
One of those kind of sitcoms. And it came out right around the time that those were popular.
Yeah, that sounds alright.
But it was designed for people with like a low intermediate level, right? So one of the characters in the show doesn't speak any, or speaks very little French or Spanish. And so the other characters kind of have to dumb down their speech for him. And they speak nice and slow and clearly. And,
yeah.
I found that to be really useful because even though I was trying to, like, read kids' books and things like that, it didn't really, even a child in the language that I'm learning is able to speak the language better than I can. So I found it really useful to have something that was interesting and, like, designed for adults, just adults who don't happen to be very good at French yet.
Yeah. Well, I know, and this again is another. This will probably leave. You're probably gonna get a ton of thumbs down on this videos because like I feel like people hate on MIA just for whatever reason.
Yeah,
but
it's whatever. People can hate.
But I mean, this has nothing to do with MIA, I guess. But I don't even remember who I was talking to, man. But I was literally talking to somebody one time, and they were like I was like, oh, maybe I should try to find, like this kid's book or whatever. And they were like, would you read a kid's book in English? And I said, probably not. And they said, why do it in your target? Like, if it doesn't interest you, what makes you think it's going to interest you somewhere else? So, like, and like, obviously it's not meant in the way it was said, but like, it also rings true. Like, if I love pro wrestling, I'm going to go watch pro wrestling, just Japanese version of pro wrestling.
Sure.
If I love, one of the things I watch every single day is there's two people on YouTube that I watch in Japanese every day. It's a person called Fate Gaming and a girl named Asuka. Asuka Channel is what her channel is called, which it's in hiragana, but, or actually it's in kanji, but I watch this every day and they play Mario Maker, like every day. And it's just something I enjoy. So it's fun. So whatever.
I definitely agree with that. Find something that's entertaining inherently and not just entertaining because you're learning a language from it.
Yeah.
My problem is when finding something that you can enjoy, right? Like I would definitely want to mix language learning with whatever with whatever language I'm learning, and then with whatever hobby that that I can mix it with. I'm definitely going to do that as often as I can.
Yeah. Definitely important.
My problem though is like, okay, for example, one of my hobbies is like listening to philosophical or scientific debates, right? I'll go on YouTube and I'll listen to, I don't know, Steven Pinker and Sam Harris or some of these like really intelligent scientists debate something, right?
Right.
I mean, as much as it's not fascinating for me to read, right, like, oops. So here, The Little Prince. It's a kid's book.
Yeah.
Is it interesting? I mean, it's not my favorite book that I would want to read, but to me, it's more interesting than pulling up like a history book that I can't read.
I gotcha. Yeah.
If it's something that's just so advanced for me that, like, if I'm listening to a podcast, listening to a video, listening to a debate, and I'm not understanding any of it, that's not interesting to me. And maybe it could be interesting to me if it would hold my attention, but the problem is when I don't understand, I start to zone out, and I'm not paying attention anymore.
Yeah. No, it makes it hard. I know, that's always a huge question that I get is how do you watch? Like, that's the thing, right? Like, how do you stay motivated when it's incomprehensible or, you're not understanding it? And I wish that I had an answer for everybody. Like, I really wish that I could somehow verbalize what I've done, but that is I can't understand it. I listen to it harder. I listen to it more. I try to read into it. I try to pick out words here or there. I try to at least hear enough words to where I can look something up, because my motivation is that I can't understand it. That's actually, it doesn't demotivate me. It motivates me more because I can't. And because I can't, it makes me want to. And I wish that I could give that to people, but I can't. But like, and I can't explain why. When I listen, after this, I'm going to go in here. I'll probably pop on an episode of insert whatever Japanese show I feel like watching at the time. I'm not going to understand it. And it's going to fuel me to want to be able to understand it.
Yeah.
That's like, it's a weird thing. Yeah.
Do you get the same motivation when you do things like Duolingo? That kind of thing?
So, I've had a lot of swaying on Duolingo, and I will say, I streamed it for a little bit. Like, when I did one of my last live streams, I was like, I, as a joke, said something about Duolingo, and people were like, you should go check it out. And I was like, you know what? I've not used Duolingo in almost 5 months now, so I'm going to go and log on it. First off, they updated the Japanese course. There's a crap ton of stuff on there now. Kudos for that.
Good.
There's a couple of things I dislike about it, and that is that, especially with a language like Japanese, it's not a word-for-word translation, and a lot of it is going to be how you interpret it, and if your wording is slightly off, even if it's the same general meaning, it marks it wrong.
Yeah.
That infuriates me.
I know. I definitely know that feeling.
So that's some of the stuff. That's why I don't use it. I might pop on and do something, because I do think I think that introducing to kanji, and Duolingo does teach in a for the most part a comprehensible manner, even though the sentences are completely ridiculous sometimes. But, I mean, I would much rather spend my time doing a lot of other things. Now, I will say, and this is where I, kind of stray from the path. I know that a lot of people are just like total negative naysayers on Duolingo, and I've definitely said some negative stuff.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
But a lot of them are in fair criticism. I do think if you don't know where you're going and you haven't figured out a method, do some Duolingo. Like, just get into it. But, look, I know this is going to paint me in a negative light. 5 minutes a day isn't going to do anything for you.
Yeah.
Please, like, if you want to use Duolingo and you want to get into it, just try to use it a little bit more. Try 30 minutes a day, because 5 minutes a day. I did this math. I should memorize it by now, by how many times that I did it. So Japanese takes, I don't even remember how many hours. Well, we're gonna use Spanish as an example, because Spanish is 600 classroom hours to learn, right? 5 minutes a day times 365 days in a year. That's 1,825 minutes. Divide that by 60. That's 30.4 hours a year. So in order to get 600 hours at 5 minutes a day, you're talking 19.7 years.
Yeah, ain't happening.
And that's not happening, because you're not, even if it could happen, you're not going to keep up with it for 19 years.
Right. Yeah,
so
totally agree. I do think Duolingo is generally a good place to start for most
especially for languages that utilize a Roman alphabet, or even part of a Roman alphabet, like but yeah.
Yeah, agreed. It's not gonna bring you to fluency, not by a long shot.
No,
it has some positive aspects, especially for the languages where they have stories.
French, Spanish. I think did they add German stories?
Germans, French, Spanish, and I think Portuguese or something like that. And hopefully they'll continue adding more stories, because in my opinion, the stories are actually the strongest part of Duolingo right now.
Oh yeah, because it's the only thing that has native audio, or at least
right.
I don't know if they've changed. I'm sure Spanish. Some of the bigger courses may have it, but
Esperanto was actually the first one to have recorded audio.
I remember talking about that at the time, and I was like, how is the only language that has real audio the fake language on here? Yeah. Come on, guys.
And it can't be that hard to hire a voice actor to just, here's 300 sentences, just read them, But
if you want a bonus clip, I know this doesn't have anything to do with comprehensible input, but my biggest complaint with Duolingo is they're charging people $10 a month, and yet the courses are still community made. and they can't put native audio,
Yeah.
what the crap are you doing with that money?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? You can't tell me. They're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Do you know who lives in Pittsburgh? Every freaking body. Huge city. You can't tell me that they couldn't put an ad out and be like, hey, dude, you want a year free of Duolingo? Come record audio for 8 hours.
Right.
Dude, get out of my... Like, that's one of the things... Dude, I should never, ever... Especially for these people paying $10 a month, which is that's your own deal. But you're paying for that, and you're getting text-to-speech audio?
Mm-hmm.
Come on, man.
I agree.
That's ridiculous.
There's some things that Duolingo does well, other things not so much. The really frustrating thing for me is because I'm doing Greek, right? And the word the definite article in Greek, one of the definite articles for the masculine is just O. It's just letter O, right? But the Greek word for O is omikron. It's omicron, right? So the text-to-speech will literally be reading the sentence, and instead of O Andras, the man, it's Omicron Andras, right?
It does that with epsilon as well,
epsilon,
I believe. Yeah, man, it's brutal.
But anyways, as I was saying, I do think Duolingo has a lot of potential, especially with their stories.
Yeah, no, I think if they were to do that for Japanese, that would be absolutely incredible.
But,
there's some stuff that
sorry, we're running into a little bit of lag here, so that's why on the final video it'll probably sound like we're talking over each other a lot.
Yeah, go ahead.
But and I think the reason these stories are so useful and why they are the best part of Duolingo is because it's comprehensible input. It's like the very definition, right? You click right on the word. If you don't understand it, it gives you the translation. It makes it comprehensible.
Yeah. Maybe I guess that's maybe where they're putting their money. And I mean, realistically, that's the way it should be. Because I think, like, if I started introducing Duolingo back into what I'm doing and I used it 10 minutes a day, I don't think that would be a waste.
No.
I think where it's a waste is when people use that as their only means. Like, it should be a supplement, and a tiny supplement to a much bigger scale.
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100%. I still use Duolingo. I'm using it currently right now for Greek.
Yeah, I see you post about the crazy...
Yeah.
What was there was something earlier today that you had posted that cracked me up. I can't remember what it was.
I often dream about green lions or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. What in the world?
Makes no sense. Yeah, I use Duolingo, but I do like maybe 2 lessons a day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I essentially do just enough to maintain my streak.
Yeah.
I'll do like 2 lessons in Greek, and then I'll do 2 stories in French just to like keep my French active because I want to help maintain it.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
But,
and that's if I go after Japanese, which Japanese will never end for me, but like once I get to a level where I'm comfortable and I want to start studying something, like I do dabble in Afrikaans, but once I get serious about wanting to like add another language, like when it'll become my full time and Japanese will go into this what is it called, whatever you just said about your French, you want to just maintain like maintenance mode type of thing. I mean, I'll probably if there's a Duolingo course, if it is a Latin-based alphabet, I probably will do a couple of lessons a day just to do it. But I don't see. I think if I were to be doing what I'm doing currently, like if I was for Japanese, if I were to take exactly what I'm doing for Japanese and do it for Spanish, I think that I would be having a Spanish conversation with you right now, like no question.
Right.
Like I may not know everything. I'm not saying I would be fluent in 5 months. I don't even like saying the F word, period. But I think that it's just Japanese is a whole different animal. But I honestly think that if I was doing this for like Spanish or something, that I would be to a point of at least being able to have some sort of a conversation with you. Sure. Like that's how confident I am in what I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean when you're motivated and you're actively pursuing it and you're immersing yourself and you're doing it every day, you can learn real quick.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're immersing yourself in content. There's a slump, especially at the beginning when you're like, oh gosh, I don't want to read The Little Prince. I don't want to read The Little Dragon, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to read the story about Miguel and Yorgos and Link. right?
Yeah, I don't care about the dude in his shoes. Put the shoes on the shelf. Get out of the store.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, he goes, okay, we get it. He's a cook. He goes to work every day. He keeps the customers happy. But once you can get to a level where you are reading, like, what do I have up here? Game of Thrones, right? When you're watching Juego de Tronos, when you're watching stuff, when you have friends who speak the language and you're in text conversations with them every day, it gets
Makes a
easier.
huge difference. Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely.
Cool. And I think with that, I'm gonna call this debate more or less a consensus.
Yeah. Like I said, just in summary, don't negate passive immersion if it's incomprehensible, because it's training you how to hear the language. It's not that you're not getting anything out of it. You're learning how to parse the sounds of the language. That way, once you add words to it, you don't have to worry about then spending hundreds of hours listening to the language so you can understand it. You've already got that listening in. You're a step ahead.
Cool. Well, John, thanks for coming on the channel, and
yeah, dude,
hope to do it again soon.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Cool.
Don't. I would say don't be a stranger, but I think it's my fault. So.
It's all right. Yeah. Cool. We'll see you around.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate it, man. See ya.
Yeah.